alive!
The colors show their faces from the brush, for through the clouds shoot beams of gleaming light, like sweet dreams to convey an image rush. Portray they so surreal, a vivid sight. This was the first part of an Elizabethan sonnet I wrote when I was a teenager. It was a class, it was our literature class, and I needed inspiration. Luckily, my mother and I would go to museums when I was a teenager, and we lived in Sarasota, so we had the Ringling. And we went to a gallery on Longboat Key where they had paintings by a painter named John Petrie. He was described as surrealist, which now means dreamlike. And I begged my mother, can we get this one print of his? Which it wasn't cheap. Just to give you an idea of how much the print was, the painting itself sold for $250,000. So the print wasn't cheap, but my grandmother had left me some money. So she said, okay, it's your money. That's what inspired the sonnet. Now I got an A from that one poem. And then it was published in the newspaper, that one poem. And then this one poem got me a scholarship from the Sarasota Fine Arts Society. And then this poem that suggested female eroticism was read by my high school principal. My female high school principal in front of the Fine Arts Society, which was a bunch of women in Sarasota. And I thought, okay, this is what one poem can do. Then the painter, John Petrie, was at that gallery in Sarasota, and we get a letter from the gallery. He's going to be here signing. And if he signs your painting, that increases the value, basically your print, that increases the value by about $1,000. I just show up and I've got my poem that got me a scholarship. And I say, so I wrote this based on Night Street. What do you think? And he looks at it, he reads it, he says, sign it, I want it. So, okay. I thought you were the artist, now I'm the artist. Okay, so I sign it, and then about a week later, I call his gallery up, which is in Maui, and I said, so I met John, talking to his people now. I met John, I'm just in high school, I'm trying to raise money for college. Do you think he wouldn't mind signing a bunch of images of the painting and I have my poem on the side of it? Remember, his signature is $1,000. He says, sure. So we do a limited edition print of the poem and the painting. Again, one poem. This is how far one poem can go when you're a teenager and you don't really know that much about the genre you're writing on. Then I get to Orlando. And still, I have this love of art. I'm always at Orlando Museum of Art. I'm going to different galleries. And I start talking to one of the artists there. And he said, I'm doing a night on surrealism. Would you mind doing some of your poetry at the Orlando Museum of Art? And I said, sure. So I do about 20 minutes. Then from there, they asked me to do Francophile, which, if you know anything about surrealism, began in France. So then I do another night on poetry on France. Then I do another night on poetry. So every different first Thursday for about 2 years, or every other first Thursday, they have me do a different poetry night. Then I start getting into storytelling. And then there's this guy, Rob Cowie, over there. We get together, because I'm part of the storytelling group here in Orlando, and we get together and we start talking about Orlando Story Club. And the first night I get to help out with is at the Orlando Museum of Art. the theme, after talking back and forth, ends up being surrealism. Again. Luckily, I know quite a bit about it. But this just goes to show how one small seed, one small thread, Tease, if you're out there, one small thread, one small string can just keep going and going and going. And I've done my second show at Orlando Museum of Art on surrealism. And we went all out. It wasn't just poetry. If you know anything about the genre, a lot of where creative writing comes from comes out of that one event in France. And I had improv on the stage with music, with composition, with storytelling. And that just shows how one small poem, 16 lines, inspired by painting, can keep going and live on its own. Thank you.